Digital media started making a huge impact on teens around 2011 when most people had smartphones. Now researchers are tracking how the rise of screen use is tied to a rise in depression and unhappiness in our teenagers. It's an issue that one local educator hopes parents and caregivers will pay attention to.
The addictive nature of technology is one thing, but the other is that adolescence is hard enough without being barraged by images of other people that are actually not reality. So everybody puts out on social media their idealized version of themselves, and when you are trying to formulate your own identity at 12 or 13 or 14 and you have this slightly skewed vision of everybody else's reality, that is really hard to navigate, and that is a new thing that young people are having to navigate. And it doesn't ever stop. You know, when they go home and they're still sort of wrestling with those idealized versions of their peers because they are going on Instagram or whatever the latest version of communication is, and they're seeing those versions of their peers that are not really, they're not real.
St. Andrews Middle School Principal Tim Alford conducted a survey last year and found group chats to be a top technology stressor for students. He says it's easy to see why.
They'll have 42 texts within the span of an hour, and so trying to keep up with all of that is too much for their minds and for mine. But the other thing that'll happen is they'll give each other grief in those settings in a way that adolescents often do. They'll make a joke or they'll make a little bit of a jab, and when you're in person you can interpret that tone and you can see the smile behind it, or you can sort of follow up with that person conversationally. But if that happens in a group text format, it can be really hurtful, and it's really hard for people to discern tone in those settings.
Now, Principal Tim Alford does not believe in smartphones for middle schoolers, and he encourages families to hold out on them until at least the 8th grade. And once the child does get one, be very proactive about establishing boundaries.